The dying Pakled ambassador's blood splattered across the human's uniform as his fist connected with his face. This was the last straw. Humanity was done being mocked and scorned. Now the galaxy needed them, and they were pissed. "This is an outrage," the Klikak representative screeched, his tentacles quivering with rage. "The humans cannot be trusted with a mission of this magnitude." In the center of the Galactic Council chamber, Yaris, the Pakled ambassador, struggled to his feet, wiping the blood from his mouth. His face was a mask of desperation as he addressed the assembled representatives of 100 alien races. "Please, you must listen," Yaris pleaded, his voice trembling. "Our sun is going to explode far sooner than any of our models predicted. When it does, it will set off a hypernova that will tear open the very fabric of space-time itself. Trillions will die. Entire worlds will be obliterated." A stunned silence fell over the chamber. The enormity of the situation began to sink in. There was no time to evacuate the populations of the countless planets in the blast zone. "There is only one way to prevent this catastrophe," Yaris continued. "We need neutronium-682 detonated inside our sun's core to stabilize it, but the gravity and heat near the core are too intense for our ships. They disintegrate before they can deliver the payload." His gaze turned to the human ambassador, who stood with arms crossed, a scowl etched on his face. "Analysis shows human ships are the only ones strong enough to withstand the conditions long enough to complete the mission. Please, Ambassador, on behalf of the Pakled people and all the races of the galaxy, I beg for your help." The human sneered. "Oh, now you need our help? After decades of treating us like dirt beneath your feet, give me one good reason why we should risk our lives cleaning up your mess." Yaris dropped to his knees, his head bowed. "Because billions of innocent lives are at stake, including human lives. Please, I'm begging you." The ambassador was silent for a long moment. Then, with a grunt, he nodded. "Fine, we'll do it, but don't think for a second this makes us friends." Light years away on Earth, Nolan Adams was ripped from cryosleep by the urgent summons. "Olympus Base, report immediately. Galaxy in peril." As the bone-chilling cold slowly left his body, Nolan listened to the mission brief with a deepening frown. Lethal solar radiation, crushing gravity, a bomb that could rip apart the fabric of reality itself. "A goddamn suicide mission to save the same alien bastards who've spat on us for decades," he muttered. "When do we leave?" Nolan strode into the briefing room, his boots clicking on the polished floor. A hollow schematic of the Pakled sun rotated in the center of the room, casting an eerie orange glow. Commander Graves stood beside it, his face etched with the lines of countless battles. "Adams," Graves said, wasting no time on pleasantries. He gestured to the hologram. "Your payload is 50 megatons of pure neutronium-682. We have two delivery options. Option A, kinetic impactor. You ram it into the sun's core at max velocity. Option B, get within 100,000 clicks of the core, jettison the payload, then remote detonate." Nolan scowled. Why not launch from a distance? Why risk a ship and crew? Graves zoomed in on the hollow image. Complex arcs of solar plasma danced across the surface. "The sun's magnetic loops will deflect anything not fired at close range," he explained. "We're also picking up strange grav readings. We need you to eyeball it, make the call in the moment. Ram it home or toss and blow." Nolan ran a hand through his hair, mind racing. "What about extraction? What's the exit plan?" Graves's expression turned grim. He met Nolan's gaze. "Son, this is a one-way trip. Anything that gets that close to a star's core, it ain't coming back. The only question is whether you ride your ship into oblivion or blow it to kingdom come and let the fireworks vaporize you." Nolan clenched his jaw. He nodded. "When do I meet my crew?" Graves shook his head. "No crew. More than a pilot is dead weight. You'll engage the automated systems if you need to punch out and detonate remotely." Nolan's eyes widened, alone on a suicide run. Graves clapped him on the shoulder, the weight of his hand like lead. "Report to the hangar at 0500. We're still calibrating your engines to compensate for the grav anomalies." Nolan snapped a crisp salute. Yes, sir. He hesitated. And, sir, when this is over, if we survive, humanity better get a damn parade. Graves nodded solemnly. Nolan turned on his heel and strode from the room, the fate of the galaxy resting squarely on his shoulders. The dawn sky flamed crimson as Nolan's boots struck the tarmac, echoing his purposeful stride. The Prometheus loomed ahead, her angular silhouette stark against the ruddy glow. He skimmed his palm over her hull, the cold metal a balm to his heated thoughts as he prepped mentally for the ordeal ahead. Nolan swung himself into the cockpit, hands already dancing over the controls, beginning the meticulous pre-flight check. Fuel levels, green, life support, online, power core. His fingers faltered as a shrill alarm pierced the air. Unauthorized access. His hand darted to his sidearm as he spun. Yaris. The Pakled ambassador stood framed in the hatchway, hands raised, a placating gesture. Nolan's eyes flashed. What the hell are you doing on my ship? His voice was low, dangerous. Yaris lowered his hands slowly. I had to see you, before you go. His voice held a note of desperation. I know you despise us. I know humanity owes us nothing, least of all this, but you have to understand. His words tumbled out. We were wrong about you. So very wrong. A harsh laugh escaped Nolan. Pretty speech means Jack. His eyes were chips of ice. Yaris swallowed, nodding. You're right. It changes nothing. But if not for us, must do it for yourselves. Complete this mission, and you prove humanity's worth beyond question. The Council will have to acknowledge you, recognize you as equals. His voice held a fervent note. Nolan stared at him a long moment, then jabbed a finger. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because it needs doing, because someone has to. He turned back to the controls. Now get off my ship, before I toss you off. Yaris left without a backward glance. Nolan's jaw clenched as he fired the engines. The Prometheus surged upward on a pillar of flame, the only evidence of its passing a rapidly dwindling speck against the morning sky. The ship bucked like an unbroken colt as it hurtled towards the Pakled star. Nolan wrestled with the controls, fighting the inexorable pull of the swollen red sun that filled the viewscreen. Alarms shrieked as he skimmed the roiling surface, solar flares whipping against the shields. Sweat trickled down his temple as he glanced at the payload readout. Still secure. Still. The ship heaved violently. Nolan's head cracked against the headrest, stars bursting across his vision. Sparks cascaded from the control panel, alarms blaring a cacophonous warning. Nolan blinked hard, forcing his eyes to focus on the flickering readouts. Shit. The word was a hissed exhale. The gravitational anomalies, far stronger than anticipated, were ripping into the ship's power core. System failures proliferated across the screen. The core containment was already critical. He had minutes, maybe less, before the Prometheus tore herself apart. Nolan's hand tightened on the yoke, knuckles white. His jaw set as he angled the ship's nose towards the heart of the maelstrom, towards the sun's core. He firewalled the throttle, the engines screaming, now or never. Nolan's vision swam, his body racked with searing agony as the ethereal figure's words reverberated through his skull. He forced his eyes open, squinting through the pain to focus on the shimmering apparition. Its form flickered, bands of light twisting and writhing like solar flares. What are you? Nolan ground out through clenched teeth. What do you mean, the consequences? The being's voice echoed in his mind once more, a resonant thrum that seemed to vibrate his very bones. I am the guardian of this star, tasked with preserving the delicate balance of the cosmos. What you seek to do, though born of noble intent, will bring about a cataclysm far greater than the one you aim to prevent. Nolan shook his head, wincing as the movement sent fresh waves of pain lancing through his temples. I don't understand. The Pakled sun is going to explode, tear open space-time itself. Trillions will die. The Pakled spoke the truth, but not the whole of it, the figure replied, its luminous form pulsing with each word. This star is no ordinary celestial body. It is a linchpin, a keystone in the very fabric of reality. Its destruction would indeed unleash a hypernova of unimaginable proportions, but it would also collapse the quantum filaments that hold the multiverse together. Nolan's eyes widened, his breath catching in his throat. The multiverse, you mean? Countless universes, infinite realities, all interconnected and dependent on the cosmic lattice anchored by this star. If you shatter that lattice, the chain reaction will erase not just this reality, but all of them. Every universe, every timeline, wiped from existence as if they never were. The figure's words hit Nolan like a physical blow. His hand fell away from the payload release lever, his mind reeling. The fate of not just trillions of lives, but infinite realities, all resting on his actions in this moment. What do I do?" he whispered, his voice hoarse with desperation. The figure seemed to regard him for a long moment, the swirling patterns of its form shifting and coalescing. "There is another way," it said at last, "a way to stabilize the star, to mend the fraying threads of the cosmic web. But it will require a sacrifice." Nolan swallowed hard, a cold knot of dread settling in his gut. What kind of sacrifice? In response, the figure extended a shimmering appendage, tendrils of light reaching out to brush against Nolan's forehead. "Your ship's drive, the technology you call the Alcubierre drive. It holds the key. By overloading its core and jettisoning it into the heart of the star at the moment of collapse, the resulting burst of exotic energy will counteract the hypernova, resetting the quantum filaments into a stable configuration." "But the drive powers our warp bubble. Without it—" Nolan trailed off, the realization hitting him like a punch to the stomach. Without the drive, he would be trapped, the Prometheus consumed by the star's inferno. "I did say it would require a sacrifice," the figure replied softly, almost apologetically. Nolan closed his eyes, his heart hammering against his ribs. To save not just the galaxy but the entire multiverse. It was a burden he had never imagined, a choice he had never dreamed he would face. But in the end, was there really a choice at all? His jaw tightened with resolve as his eyes snapped open, his hand flying across the control panel. Initiating drive core overload, engaging ejection protocols. Proximity alerts screamed as he threw the Prometheus into a wild spin, angling the ship towards the heart of the maelstrom. The figure watched, its form shimmering with what might have been approval. "You have chosen well, Nolan Adams. Your sacrifice will echo across the ages, even if none shall ever know of it." Nolan barely heard the words, his entire being focused on the task at hand. The view screen filled with blinding light as the drive core exploded from the ship, a miniature supernova blooming against the inferno of the star's core. Space itself seemed to convulse, reality warping and buckling as the competing forces clashed. And then, in a flash of searing radiance, everything went white. Nolan stared at the shimmering figure, his mind reeling from the implications. "What consequences?" he demanded. "If I don't do this, trillions will die." The being's voice resonated in his mind, a thrum that seemed to vibrate his very bones. "This sun's destruction is meant to be. It is part of a cycle as old as the universe itself. Each star's death seeds the cosmos with the building blocks of new life. If you prevent this, you doom not just those alive now, but countless future generations." Nolan hesitated, torn. Every fiber of his being screamed to complete the mission, to save the lives he knew were at stake. But the being's words gnawed at him, a whisper of doubt that refused to be silenced. "Why should I believe you?" he asked, his voice hoarse. The being's form pulsed, bands of light twisting and writhing. "Belief is irrelevant. The choice is still yours. But know that the path of least destruction is rarely the path of wisdom." With that, the figure vanished, leaving Nolan alone once more in the shuddering confines of the Prometheus. His hand hovered over the release lever, the weight of billions of lives balanced against the cryptic warning of an alien entity. Seconds ticked by, each one an eternity as he wrestled with the decision. The ship groaned around him, a reminder of the titanic forces threatening to tear it apart at any moment. Ultimately, Nolan made his choice. With a grunt of effort, he engaged the release, watching on the flickering monitors as the payload drifted towards the sun's roiling core, a tiny mote against the inferno. Then, jaw set, he punched the Alcubierre drive to full power. Space itself seemed to fold around the Prometheus as it leapt away from the doomed star at impossible speeds, riding the crest of a shockwave that outpaced light itself. Mere seconds later, the Neutronium-682 reached critical mass. It detonated in a cataclysmic explosion unlike anything the universe had ever witnessed, an unfathomable release of raw energy that instantly vaporized everything within 1 billion kilometers. The shockwave caught up to the Prometheus an instant later. Nolan had a momentary impression of unimaginable forces slamming against the ship's hull, crushing it like tinfoil. Then everything went black. He awoke to the copper taste of blood in his mouth, his vision blurred and head pounding. Emergency lights flickered feebly in the smoky air of the ruined cockpit. Coughing, Nolan hauled himself upright, his body screaming in protest. He surveyed the wreckage of the once proud Prometheus. Miraculously, the ship was still intact, but all systems were dead, even life support. With no power, he knew he had hours of air left at most. Staggering to the view screen, Nolan wiped soot from its cracked surface with a trembling hand. Outside, unfamiliar stars wheeled in the endless void. He had no idea where he was. The detonation had hurled him an impossible distance. With no way to call for help, his fate was sealed. As his vision began to dim, Nolan's thoughts turned to the being's final words. He could only hope that the path he'd chosen was the right one. In the end, as the last of his air ran out, his final thought was a defiant one. At least when humans get mad, we do something about it. And with that, Nolan Adams, the hero who saved the galaxy, breathed his last, a silent monument to humankind's indomitable. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.